Remember the first week? The headlines that made your stomach drop? The numbers that felt obscene? The petrol price that forced you to sit down and recalculate your month? You talked about it at dinner. You argued about it online. It felt like something had genuinely broken. Now think about last week. The same war, or the same economic strain, likely continued. Did you even check? Psychologists recognize this silence as a documented mechanism, a biological adjustment to a constant environment. This specific cognitive trait provides a significant advantage to any institution managing a long-term crisis, allowing them to wait out the period of peak public scrutiny. Human brains are wired to react to change, not to static situations. A sudden shock triggers stress hormones and locks our attention. But when that stimulus persists, the response weakens until the brain stops flagging it as important. This is habituation. It is why you stop hearing a loud fan after 10 minutes in a room. Petrol prices provide a clear example of this recalibration. When the price first jumped, the immediate shock felt like theft because the memory of the old price was still the primary reference. This feeling led to immediate protests, hashtags, and politicians rushing to explain themselves. Then the price stayed high. Over the following months, the public response quieted. This chart demonstrates an economic concept called anchoring. As today's price is no longer compared to last year's, but to last month's, the shocking number becomes the new reference point. This suggests that paying significantly more while feeling significantly less about it is a sign of psychological conditioning rather than an increase in financial resilience. This same recalibration applies to the timeline of a war. What begins as an emergency eventually settles into the background. Billions of dollars in emergency funding transition into routine lines in a national budget. Within a few months, the scale moves from shocking to boring. Even the language shifts to aid this normalization. An invasion becomes an operation becomes an engagement. Eventually, it is just a situation. This process influences how we process human suffering through a phenomenon known as psychic numbing. Empathy is most easily triggered by a single victim with a name and a face. But as the number of victims increases, they transition into a statistic. Research indicates that as the scale of a tragedy goes up, our measurable empathy actually goes down. The result is a paradox. The larger a catastrophe becomes, the less we are biologically equipped to feel it. It is worth considering whether this normalization is a deliberate strategy or simply the natural physics of human attention. The outcome is identical. Decision-makers face intense scrutiny for a brief window, often roughly 2 weeks, followed by a long period of near silence. Meanwhile, the spending and the consequences continue to pile up long after public accountability has expired. This suggests an unspoken rule for surviving a crisis. Winning the argument is unnecessary. One only has to outlast the feeling. Public outrage has a shelf life, while bureaucratic institutions have unlimited patience. The justification for the war, or the necessity of the price hikes, becomes secondary to a more quiet change. We are left to determine if our moral judgment remains intact, or if we have simply adjusted to a higher baseline of discomfort. When discomfort becomes the new normal, the cost of maintaining the status quo drops significantly for those in power. To continue exploring the mechanisms behind the news, like, share, and subscribe to The Explainer.